Bon après-midi. Voici. Voici.
Put my foot up.
And we're here to talk about Cara's new book, second book, for Kate Rhys, American sharpshooter in World War II, called Night Flight to Paris. Now, Rhys has already told us, for those of you who are here, that Paris is the essential word in any book title, right?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, any day now it'll be like, you know, the Paris toilet, won't it? Everything else.
Too funny. So Cara's first book was Murder in the Marais, and we have been together, I think, for her, just as Rhys and I have been together for all of her books. Cara and I have been together for all of her books as well. And it's been a remarkable career. How many of you are familiar with her sleuth innate? Right. So the first, why don't we talk just a moment? I'm going to hand this over to Rhys, but the question did arise before you got here. When did you publish your first book for Kate? What year was it? Was it 2020?
When the pandemic came and I was supposed to come here and the tour got
3 hours in Paris, right?
Yeah. So it was that, was it 2020?
I don't know.
Or 19.
It was, I'm sure it was 2020. Okay.
Yeah, because everything was closed.
Right, so our conversation was virtual. Somebody asked me, and I think you were sitting elegantly on your balcony, and we had a whole conversation, and, you know, it was great. Anyway, this is the second for Kate Rhys, and I like it because this is March is Women's History Month.
Yes.
But additionally, the other day, Wednesday, I think it was, Wednesday, March 8th was International Women's Day, when there were many demonstrations across the world about women and the roles that they could play. And so Cara's book, Cara writing Kate. Wait, couldn't you have called her Joan or something? I don't know. Anyway, really ties into both those themes. And in the same way, Molly Murphy is also, because part of Molly's journey has been empowerment, which is a word I prefer to saying she gained agency, which I think is becoming kind of a irritating cliche, even though it kind of means the same thing. But I like empowerment better, right? So anyway, over to you, Rhys.
You're all familiar with MA, right? And we've been through every arrondissement except one now, right? Except one, right? And so Kate came to the fore 2 years ago, I believe, in a book that really knocked my socks off. I mean, they're not. I get to read a lot of books. People give me books to read all the time, to blurb all the time, and this is one of these books I did not breathe till the end of the book. It's just the pace was, the intensity, the stakes were so high. So I'm interested in how you came up with a female sharpshooter from the backwoods of Oregon who finds herself in Scotland. I mean, where'd she come from?
Before we go any further, do you know who came up with the title for Night Flight to Paris? This lady here. Rhys came up with this. Over my kitchen table once or something. I said, I'm terrible with titles.
Yeah. And so she said, it has to have Paris in the title. Yes. What can we do? And so I said, why don't we call it Night Flight to Paris? She said, there isn't one. I said, there is now.
So just blame her, but I think that was great. So.
And it's also Vol de Nuit.
Oui. Vol de Nuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where did Kate come from? Well, she came from, that I had been writing in you, half French, half American, taller and thinner than I am, living on his side, much more, like this. And it was really kind of nice to write as an American gal, growing up in backwoods Oregon, who would not be politically correct, who would be, not that Amy is politically correct, but, she had learned about French. She had 5 brothers and learned to shoot as soon as she could hold a rifle. But her 5 brothers, there was no girl time. Her mother had passed away. So she got to go every summer to, it was Medford. Her aunt had a pension, rooming house.
Yeah.
And in the rooming house was an older woman who was a World War I bride from France. So she would take Kate under her wing, teach her little words of French, gave her lipstick, taught her how to put lipstick on, and Kate was just like, oh my God, this is so great. She started learning French from her, got these old textbooks. Anyway, got a scholarship at the Alliance Française to go study French at the Sorbonne.
We have actually a
1937.
very good chapter. Was anybody here from the Alliance Française? Because we have a terrific one here in Phoenix.
Very,
I
yep.
remember.
Sorry?
I remember.
Oh, okay. Well, you
But
can.
they have French classes and movies and so many cultural events. So that's how Kate got to Paris. Kind of and met this romantic Welshman, because they're always romantic, right, when they're in Paris. And
Even the Welsh?
oh, he was very,
Tom Jones, Richard Burton.
Right, okay.
So they met there and fell in love. In 1937, the summer before the war, before it amped up, when they thought, maybe there would be peace. So got married and went up to the Orkney Islands, had a baby, then the Luftwaffe attacked.
Who has read the first book in the series? Oh, see, we're preaching to the choir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, if the first book, I would say, was a frenetic pace, this one has probably even upped the ante a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Maybe.
Again, Kate is quite happy in Scotland being an instructor, and she's summoned down to London again, and she's given not one, but 3 assignments.
3 assignments, yeah. And one of those assignments is bringing penicillin cultures to the Pasteur Institute in the 15th arrondissement for a doctor, a scientist, to make from the cultures, to make penicillin. It's very new. They have a lot of sulfa drugs, but penicillin was
Well,
different.
penicillin was new, and the other thing was that there wasn't any way to manufacture it up to a level where it was going to be all that useful. There's a terrific book by, I can't think of her name at the moment, sorry, senior moment. Anyway, it was all about World War II and penicillin, and the pressure there was to manufacture enough penicillin. And it started out very poignantly with a man who skinned his knee playing, I don't remember whether it was tennis or anyway, on a court in New York, and he got an infection in his knee, and it crept up, and he was dying, but they found penicillin, and they gave him some, and then they ran out, and you could watch the infection take back over, and he died, which I thought, was such a graphic way of making it clear that just because you find a drug doesn't mean that you can make it commercially available, which we're seeing a lot of right now. We saw it during the pandemic and other things, but the Pasteur Institute has been, an important place to try to bring it to the soldiers. Battlefield wounds and all of them.
And that only happened because I was in the Pasteur researching.
Don't panic, it's okay, we'll all wait.
I'm not
We'll all
available.
turn ours off. Also.
It's a good moment to say it'd be a good idea to
Yeah.
turn this off. I failed to do my best, so
Thank
let's
you
do
for
that.
reminding us.
I know, it's so publicly embarrassing, isn't it, when you're found out?
It was actually,
It's not my phone, no.
it was actually at the Tucson Book Festival a couple of years ago. A woman at the table said her daughter worked at the Pasteur Institute, and if I'd like to go, she would take me around. And I was researching the Amy book, Murder at the Port of Versailles, set in the 15th arrondissement. So I said, I want to go to the Pasteur. So I got a tour of the Pasteur, and one of the people took me around and said, this is where they hid the Jewish children.
Wow, really?
I know, I couldn't make that up, so I knew I had to use it in the story. So, it's all very, they don't say much, and then they're very, a lot of those, and then a woman who's worked there for 30 years came and spoke with me, and, they only knew like secondhand, right? But they've been told.
Yeah.
It's an incredible place.
Yeah, wow.
Huge, really huge.
Isn't it amazing? We were talking in the hour before in the morning how the least little thing sort of leads to story, and you suddenly realize I could use this, and then it just sort of mushrooms from there.
Exactly. And when Kate goes to Cairo, Cairo was a nest of spies.
Absolutely.
And wonderful books about that, about the British there, and just about this. You've got these men who had, grown up in villages and they never had any money, or they were miners, and now they're in Cairo where it's hot. There's no curfew, there's no blackout, they have money, there's women, and it became quite a wild town.
Yeah, but there was a lot of action in North Africa too, because after all, eventually it was the jumping off point to, for the Allies to head to Sicily and come up through the underbelly of Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Operation Torch.
Yeah. Well, my father was at Al Alamein, you know, the big battles in Egypt.
Well, that's what Rommel did, you know, with his tank corps and the whole thing. But it was.
So, Cairo, did you actually go to Cairo?
I have been to Cairo, but not in 1942.
You could have stayed at Shepherd's Hotel if you'd gone in 1942. I looked for it on the occasions when I've been to Cairo, and sadly, it's no longer the colonial experience.
I was robbed in the train station, broke, scared, couldn't speak Arabic. I could count to 5 in Arabic, and that wouldn't get me far. And this was before cell phones, right? So it was super scary. And then I made a friend who I have to this day. So it was really interesting. But I think I could use for Kate that feeling of just being total at sea, panic, not knowing, not being, they can't read the signs. You know? That's
out of your environment, totally. Right?
totally.
Sorry, the dog's having a temper tantrum.
Well, she's been very quiet for an hour, nearly 2 hours.
Jamie, do you want to let her go? She might just come to me.
So, anyway, so that we have one assignment, which is to bring the penicillin.
No, I mean just let her.
We have one assignment to do what?
To take out a high-ranking German operative from who's working with, who is Rommel's eyes and ears. You know, Rommel, like called the Desert Fox, and how smart he was. But he had a lot of information that was fed through encrypted or decrypted, you know, signals intelligence. Encrypted. So the coding, and he had it in there. And so a lot of the Arab tribes were against the British, so they were helping the Germans. Which was really fascinating. And so that is based in truth. And that, but this operative is coming to Paris, and then in Paris, in the Hotel de Tessia, which is the super triple zipple 5-star, 20-star hotel, was the German military intelligence, the Abwehr station. Such an incredible hotel. So Canaris, Admiral Canaris, I believe, was head of that, and someone should write about him because or they haven't. But I mean, he was supposedly a friend of Churchill's.
Well, he did try, you know, in the end to get rid of Hitler and paid for it.
Paid for it.
It's interesting how many people had ties to church. I mean, look at Chanel. She was a good friend of Churchill. In fact, they wanted to use her to get to Churchill to persuade him to stop the war. Didn't they? So, you know, all these little nuances all the time. People who knew each other. So that's 2 assignments. Neither of these are too shabby. You know, if I was given either, I wouldn't say, oh, well, I can get that done tomorrow. You know. So what's the third?
To exfiltrate her friend Margo, who she trained with up in Scotland, and Margo saved Kate's life, and she has requested Kate to come and said only Kate can do this job. It has to be Kate. So that's and to extricate her, you know, fly in and then get her out on the plane, which is no easy feat. You know?
And of course, we find out that we didn't know as much about Margo as we thought we knew, right? We can't really tell you now because we'd have to kill you all, right? And then we learn why only Kate can do this mission too. So poor Kate, she's shoved into Paris, and the thing that struck me through the whole book is, how do you know who to trust? That's the theme going through the whole thing, isn't it?
Exactly. When I sent my manuscript to my editor, she said, "Do you know what your theme is?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, it's trust, just like Rhys said, you know." And that's why I have an editor, right? Who tells me that. But it is about trust, because when you think about it, they're told in training and the whole time, trust no one, because you never know. Even good people do bad things, and bad people do good things. And it's all about keeping your cover. And you know, how is that? How can you live like that if you can't trust anyone?
Yeah, she was fine.
Sorry, the dog's stealing the show.
Does she have a cookie? Whose cookie did you take? Anyone I could find.
A thief. I love it.
But how How could you have a relationship if you can't trust anyone? You can't trust. That's awful.
It is. But one of the things I thought was really interesting in this book, you know, Kate was so damaged and so devastated by the death of her husband and her child, but there is a character in this book that shows that she is actually has a potential new life that will develop for her, depending or not, depending on whether this is a trustworthy person or not.
You're talking about Philippe, right?
I am.
Yes.
Right. And this is now 1942, and we met Kate in 1940 when she was sent to Paris to assassinate Hitler. But you have left yourself some years of the war to go, just in case you're planning to write more about her.
Yeah.
Clever you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Did she ever, I never thought in the book that she knew why she was sent. She just did this kind of step by step, and then there was another step. And
Yeah, nobody told her
okay.
at all, this is your assignment, did they? I mean, she gets to Cara, for example, and she doesn't know who she's got to assassinate, and she's just told, and then, you know, then she hesitates, like, is this a woman I've got to assassinate? And I think it's interesting in the first book that it was a sharpshooter really must have, an assassin must have no humanity at all. They must be completely, and yet the reason that she can't complete the first assassination is because of her humanity.
The child.
Yeah, the child. Yeah, she can't treat a child.
Yeah, well, like they didn't pay her to do that. Can I read the saying by Joseph Stalin here? This is really like it if it's in this book. Why not? So Joe Stalin says.
And we know what a wonderful humanitarian he was. So.
Good old Joe. Yeah.
A spy should be like the devil. No one can trust him, not even himself. So that's kind of the climate. It's,
I mean, it does prove in this book, time and time again, she has, she cannot trust someone, right? Just when you think you've got a good ally, I mean, how could you live like that?
I think that has to be really hard, you know, and I don't know, maybe all of us have family who served, you know, in the past in the war, and there's people in my family who would never talk about it, you know, never talk about what happened, and I think a lot of us do. But so they were suffering this PTSD before we knew what it was, and how that probably shaped us. You know, it ripples down through the generations in whatever way, you know, how we are.
You know, what's interesting is there are so many different motivations for people to spy, to commit espionage. Some of them are financial, some of them are ideological, some of them are romantic, you know, some of them are patriotic, and you never can be entirely sure when you meet a person whether one of those, you know, I mean, it's amazing looking back at the people who actually spied for Germany, or currently people who are spying for Russia. You know, it's a huge problem in Buenos Aires with all these pregnant women arriving, you know, in Argentina, the Russian pregnant women, and the big problem is they can't tell which of them are, you know, are pregnant in order to infiltrate and spy, which of them are
and then they get
actually just pregnant.
They get the Argentinian passport, and they can go wherever they like, right? So it's a big problem.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you screen a pregnant woman, you know, for her motivation?
But there's so many untold stories of women, especially during the war. I meant to tell you this, that I found out that Kate Middleton, right, who may be queen someday, Kate Middleton's grandmother was a coder at Bletchley Park. I had no idea. And that thousands of women did this, but they were called girls. They were paid much less than men, and their records were not kept. Because they were girls who felt they had no value after the war. They had just done the decoding. However, in military intelligence, the British military intelligence, they had signals intelligence, which was responsible for coding and radar. And again, women did these jobs encoding and decoding. They weren't agents. They just sat at a wireless and they took this all down. And their records were kept. And those, because they were in military intelligence, and those records are being declassified. And there's a story, a wonderful book I read about two sisters who worked for signals intelligence, but they had signed the Official Secrets Act. They didn't know until early 2000s when the files were being declassified that each of them had worked in signals intelligence. Different,
Yeah.
same branch, different continents.
Wow.
And then they were like, you did it, oh, you did it. And then they wrote a book. It's wonderful.
I mean, that's the sad thing, is all these people who worked in intelligence during the war, they signed the Official Secrets Act, and so they could tell nobody. So their family thought, oh, this person has a boring office job. They're not doing anything to help the war effort, really. They're rather pathetic, aren't they? And they would be set upon at train stations. Why aren't you in uniform? When actually they were doing more to save the country than someone who was. And it wasn't till the mid-90s that they could talk about it. So a lot of parents died, never knowing that their son or daughter was a hero.
Right.
In fact, Kate Middleton didn't find out about her grandmother till like 1998, was when it was declassified.
And then there's the quiet acts of heroism that women did in France. I know a woman who was, well, she sadly passed away, French woman. She was in her 90s in a Resistance, had a croix de guerre. And we met at the cafe outside her apartment in Montparnasse. And Barbara, her complexion was amazing. 90-something, her complexion was like, it was gorgeous.
Oh.
You know, and that's just natural.
Yeah.
I kept looking at her complexion and she was like, but during the war, she was from Lyon. Her father had a printing press, and her husband was a POW. She had a toddler, 2 or 3. She could strap on her back. She had a bicycle, and she would go sometimes to help her father or do errands for him at the printing press. And he said, and one day she had got these eggs on the black market, and so she was very proud. She had them in the basket. She went to her father, and he said, I have something. You have to do it for me. I can't leave. Please take this package to the outskirts of Lyon and put it in the basket, and the eggs on top, toddler on the back. She rode her bike out to the outskirts of Lyon, and there was a German patrol, a checkpoint. And she was like, okay, and they just put her. She went to wherever it was, and there were the maquisards, the men who resisted in the countryside. They came out. They said, you have something for us? Well, how about those eggs? She goes, no, it's underneath. Gave them the package full of guns. Full of guns and ammunition that her father had given her.
Yeah.
And I said, weren't you scared? And she said, well. And then I didn't say, how could your father have done that? But, you know, it was wartime. And we were talking, and I said, how do you feel about that? She said, well, my husband was in a prisoner of war camp. Those Germans walked up and down the street in front of our house every day. I hated them, but we did have a roof over our head. We had food to eat, unlike some people, but I wanted to do something. You know, this is the only way I could get back. You know, like these quiet acts of defiance, you know, telling them, oh, the Louvre, oh, it's over there. You know, those. But what are you going to do? You have a family, you have a child. I mean, you're not going to go blow up trains necessarily, you know. It made me think when I was writing the book, what would I have done? Would I have stepped up? I like to think I would have, right?
Yeah, but you start to think, would I have had the nerve to push my bicycle past the German patrol, knowing that I had something in that basket? You know,
Especially with your child.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But that's the perfect cover. They underestimate women.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the next standalone takes place in the Paris assignment takes place as a courier, and her friends who are the radio operator and another courier that she has to meet. And the fact is that you are invisible. You go past wheeling your little bicycle and with your shopping basket, and no one's going to stop you most of the time.
Especially if you're older.
Yeah.
Because we all know that older
Oh, we
people
all
just
be
like
good with
panes
me.
of glass, right? And everybody looks right through you.
Right. We'll sign up next time, Margo.
So, back to Kate Rhys. So she's off. Where is she off to?
She goes to Paris, and she, what does she do? Oh yeah, she has a lot of false starts, and she, let's see, where does she go? Okay, she goes one place. She thinks she's getting a clue she's going there to meet Margo, and Margo is very elusive, and she thinks she's being followed, and she has to drop off the penicillin, and then she keeps getting all these, you know, like what do you call it? You know, like under a rock there'll be a message or something, and so does a lot of things, a lot of, what do I want to say, faux peace,
Yeah.
wrong way, all the wrong way, red herring. She doesn't really know who to trust, but she meets these poets, a poet in the party who I loved writing about, based on a real poet.
Yeah.
He was Armenian. He was part of the group called FTP-MOI. They were a sabotage group in occupied Paris, and they were all killed, executed at Mont Valérien. But he says to her, I'm Eastern European. I'm a communist, and if that's not enough, I'm a Jew. So I've got all these strikes against him, and they were the ones who took these active roles.
Yeah.
So she has to try and work with them, and they're very Wildcard. They do what they want to do because they're not, bankrolled by anyone. So, except the British give them some guns. So she has to deal with people who are really edgy. How are you going to get her job back? She's going to get their penicillin. Can she trust them? So, but I think in 1942 the danger was heightened because on the streets you could be stopped at any time and asked to show your papers.
And what you didn't mention before she gets to Paris is they have this prisoner of war camp for German officers, but it's a very nice situation. It's not a camp. They're living in a very nice, comfortable environment, and they're sitting and chatting with each other. And of course, they're bugged the whole time. So everything they say is being listened to. And Kate's sent there, isn't she, to be the cleaning lady again, because nobody notices the cleaning lady.
Exactly. It's based on Latimer House, a real place where they bugged, all the rooms and everything, and they were lulling the elite. They put it the elite German military who were captured, from the Navy or the Luftwaffe, and they would be in a cell, and maybe they would start talking, and they could hear everything. And they had people who were actually German refugees who were working for them.
Yeah. And Kate has an extra impetus because one of them calls her a cow.
Oh yeah, her hips are like a cow's. So she was like, but there was a reason which we cannot reveal why she had to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Because sometimes I know during COVID or whatever, we all had to do a lot of research online, but nothing beats being on the ground. I think if you can, in the place, in the walking through. And Kate would never have come up with that one detail, which we can't reveal, if she hadn't done that.
No.
So, I think, and I know you do your research on the ground, boots on the ground.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to research, in France?
Yeah.
You don't care.
Somebody has to.
Yeah.
Well, you've actually taken groups of people around Paris, haven't you? The Cara Black Mystery Tour or whatever it is.
Exactly.
I know you've done that.
And I'm doing one in April, and Judy might join us later, but it's an Amy Kate tour.
Okay.
We'll walk around where Kate goes, some of the places, not every place, and we'll have a day, then we'll do an Amy tour, walk where Amy goes in the books.
Yeah.
Then I'll have a writer's day at a writer's salon, talking with another writer over there, Janet Skesley and Charles.
Oh, yes, she's wonderful.
She's my buddy, and we're going to do a talk at the writer's atelier.
She's excellent.
Her book was wonderful, and it had the most unlikely conclusion after spending almost the entire time in Bush, wound up in Montana.
Excellent.
I mean, I've talked, I did her U.S. book lunch, and I still remember, trying to figure out the connection.
She's from Montana.
That's the connection, yes. It turns out she's from Montana, so it wasn't as fantastical that the book would end up there. But what was it called? The Paris Key? Paris something?
Paris Library.
Paris Library?
Paris Library.
Based on the American Library in Paris.
Exactly, right. Which Mark Pryor, I think, used in one of his Hugo Marston books as well.
Yeah. And then every night we have aperitif and hors d'oeuvres in the lobby. We have a little room in the hotel.
A chambre.
Whoa.
And then we have all that. We talk about the day or what we're going to do tomorrow, or maybe I have my, French police friends visit.
With wine.
Yeah, he drinks wine. No, if he's off duty, he can drink wine.
So how do people join your group?
Yeah, go to my website.
Yeah.
Look for Cara Black. We're full, but for April, but let me know, and we have waiting lists, and we, if you want to go and sign up, and we'll do the next one.
How many people do you take?
Max 12. Yeah. And we walk, we take the metro, we take the bus, we move. Like Amy, yeah, we move.
Got it.
What do you do for dinner?
Orange, right?
What do you do for dinners after all these hors d'oeuvres? Do you go to dinner together, or do you have your own?
You can, a lot of people who come on this trip know Paris very well. They're very sophisticated. So they come on this they want to do the Amy thing. But no, dinner's on your own, but we have really substantial hors d'oeuvres. But, so yeah, it's really about being together, experiencing it. We talk about the day, I talk about a book. But it's fun. If you want to look at it through a different lens, I have no pretense of being Donna Leon, but if Donna Leon did a trip of Venice, I am like there, right? So I'm hoping you get some of, you know what I mean? You get the view through Amy.
I'm talking to Donna on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, and bless her heart, she said to me, because she lives in Switzerland now, she said, that's 4 o'clock my time, right? And I wrote back, Cara, I said, I'm really sorry to tell you, it's actually 10 o'clock. So I'm not entirely sure how that will work out. But,
Okay.
Right, but she's a marvel. So interesting to talk to.
Would you just love to go in a gondola with her or something? Or
She
Brittany.
she has a memoir coming out in September, and I'm hoping that maybe we can lure her over here to do that, because I've done her book launches for years. But,
I mean, that's the thing with her. What I try and do too. When you read her books, when I'm in Venice, I sort of stop and go, oh,
right.
well, that's the coffee shop where that happened. You know, you can do that all the time, which is
You
fun.
can. It broke my heart that if any of you ever watched it, the entire Donna Leon Commissario Guido Brunetti series on television is German.
Oh.
German company, German actors, a whole bit, and none of them look Italian. I mean, zero look Italian. So it's kind of unnerving. And furthermore, they changed cast halfway through. So you had to adjust to a whole new, in the process.
Where did you see this?
It's on
MHZ, right?
Yeah, I think it's on MHZ. If you haven't discovered, MHZ TV has some of the best French programs ever. I mean, they are amazing. My husband and I are completely addicted to the French police dramas on MHC TV. And there's one called Murder in ... ellipses that's had 12 seasons, I think. And it's not that the plots are necessarily fabulous, but they go to a different part of France, and every one they use drones. It's just like French tourism all together. I'm pretty sure there'll be a new season, because why not?
Why not? Yeah. Candice Renoir is also good, and she's in Set, SETE. Oh, I love
Right,
it.
and the one currently that we're watching, I can't remember the name of it, but it'll come to me, is in Strasbourg. So the overhead views of Strasbourg, my husband has dragged me eating through Strasbourg, because it's full of Michelin restaurants. But so if you haven't discovered it, any of you watch Call My Agent?
Oh, yeah.
In French. I mean, you have to watch it in French.
Yes.
Not the British version.
Call My
Watch it with it. It's incredible.
And the French title is something 10%.
Yeah.
Well, how come French agents only take 10 when our agents take 15? I mean,
Right.
Yes.
Well,
And
we
you-
did
and then-
it there, but
detours.
Did you watch Death in Provence?
Yes. I hope they're going to do more.
The one thing that's strange with that is you've got French people speaking with strange English American accents. It's very hard to sort of justify, isn't it? But
And the M.L. Longworth series that takes place in Aix-en-Provence is British, and the actor, I'm trying to think where he comes over from, but we'd seen him in something else, so it was really hard to accept him as, the sort of quintessential French judge. But if you've not read the M.L. Longworth series, they are absolutely wonderful. The first one is Death at Chateau Grémont, I think it is, and that goes on from there. But they're beautiful in the south of France, reading very nicely.
well, that was a Death in Provence. The murders themselves were very light.
Well, is that the generic name for it?
Isn't it?
One's for the TV show.
The TV show.
Yeah.
But it is the Longworth.
Yeah.
M.L. Longworth.
Yeah,
He is an
he's a
excellent
judge.
Provence.
He's a huge. But it's called Death in Provence, I think, the TV one. And the actual crimes were very sort of, I thought, lightweight. But I'm watching all the time, and I go, look, they're going to Cassis, it's like it's a lot of travel.
Scenery,
it's a scenery.
And then there's another one set in Brittany, which is German with a Spanish actor playing the French inspector. I mean, you really gotta go with it. And it's a wonderful wonderful series. Patrick, what's the name? Because you love that. Death and Brittany is the first one. What's his name?
Oh, Jean-Luc Benalac.
Yeah.
Jean-Luc Benlac is the author, but I'm trying to remember the name of the protagonist. It'll come to me. He's the Spanish guy that was playing the French inspector. which is a really interesting part of France, Brittany. It's not like Paris at all.
But it's Celtic. I mean, it's much more like Cornwall than it is.
It is. Tristan and Isolde and all that other stuff. But
Yeah.
so we've opened up. Yeah, that's for you guys.
We've moved a long way from nightlife in
Yes.
Paris.
Yes.
So is there going to be television? There's a related question. Do you know whether Kate's going to have any sort of television adaptation?
Your
Would that
lips
be
did
great?
not say yes.
Yeah.
Amy has been optioned again.
Again, yeah.
I cannot say. I can say nothing. But,
Yeah.
but who knows?
Yeah.
Those things, you
Yeah.
never know. It's-
Right, but this is the sort of thing that,
Yeah.
because it's a thriller,
Yeah.
might have a better chance.
Well, I think the first one would make,
Yeah.
there's a better chance than this, in fact, because you move around so much in this. But the first one is very linear in
That's
what she's
true.
doing. Make a fabulous movie.
Yeah, well, if any of you know any people who are I don't know. Totally available as of now. Yeah, but I think, and we've often, Rhys and I have always toured, usually in March, because our books come out the same time, about seeing things cinematically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I try to come from. I imagine being on that street, whether it's in Cairo and it's dusty, the smell. Poor Kate has to drink that Turkish coffee, and she's like, "Whoa, what hit me?" Can you imagine the first time you ever drink that? She was like, "Whoa."
Sticky.
But to get there, and to feel the grit in your eyes from the sand, and to heat.
That's one thing I thought with this book, is this woman never eats, I think. When is she going to eat? We've got like 54 pages and she hasn't had a meal.
You mean the gist of it.
Well, she does have the Gestapo chasing her, so that'll kind of make you, not worry about it. But yeah, I know, you always say that, but yes, he doesn't eat either, but.
No.
Before you were here, we talked about the fact that Rhys has substantial food in all of her books, right? So
Yeah, the
there we
opposite,
are. So we have
So if you're on a
really-
diet, read Cara.
Right. It's that whole French woman's thing, right?
Yeah.
Telling them, yes.
Yeah, I have to say, Cara and I have toured together for years, and we've had all these exciting adventures on our tours. Talking about eating, Cara was asked to speak at a Jewish women's club in Los Angeles once. Do you remember? At a lunch meeting. So all these women sat there with their lunches while Cara gave her talk. And afterwards, she was not offered any food. She was I picked her up and she's like, "I'm starving, drive something."
Really?
Yeah, I was just like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to ask, but whatever. It was just very strange. Yeah.
You read the entertainment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
she's-
it.
I think our strangest was probably, we can claim, was the speaking at the nudist club, right? That was definitely
In November.
Yeah.
No, in the Santa Cruz Mountains in November.
Yeah.
A book club, a nudist book club.
You couldn't make that up.
It was Eunice
Too much
Washington.
information. Yeah. So it was in the Santa Cruz Mountains at a nudist resort, naturalist resort. So, and we were talking with a fellow writer, David Colbert, a guy. So as we're driving there, David says, "I'm just going to read from my book and I'm not going to look down at them." But anyway, most of them were closed because it was November. So it's
But not all of them.
not all of them. So both of them said to me, "You go first." They said, very chivalrous. So I start to talk, and this guy, he's a big guy, and he had a little beard, and he was wearing a very small backpack. And I'm talking, and he walks across the stage like this, very slowly.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm going on like, and in my books, and then he walks
Oh.
very slowly.
She's looking up.
I really felt like saying I've seen bigger and better, but I didn't.
I know, it was sort of a legitimate streaker.
Yeah. So I mean, luckily it wasn't too bad. I thought it was going to be much worse than it was, but luckily they were closed.
But we were in a yurt
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that kind of makes the whole thing. And then they invited us to eat in the cafeteria.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I want to sit on this seat, you know. Travels with Cara. That's next book, yeah.
Oh, we've done other things. I almost got her to buy a biker jacket once.
Oh, you
in
did?
LA.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful white leather biker jacket.
Yeah, she still goes on about that.
I have a picture of it.
Yeah.
I said, Dad, when you go to the Edgars, that would be perfect.
Yeah, she kept on. It was a little bit tight, I have to say. That was my excuse. But what was it? $2,500 or something? Yeah.
For an Edgar outfit, when you get
Yeah,
an award.
it's a statement piece,
It's a
right?
statement piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Heck,
And you
that's
stopped me from getting in that van.
Oh, she almost got kidnapped too in LA on the streets. You know, we get into trouble when
This is not your normal book tour.
No, we never have a normal book tour. It's always fun.
in their place in San Diego.
Oh, it was awful, wasn't it? Yeah, I booked this place in San Diego because it was right on the beach. It was, it was a motel on the beach. And I thought, how lovely, we'll wake up to the sound. It was sleazy. It was awful. First of all, there was no hot water. We're about to go and do our event at Warwick's bookstore. No hot water. The coffee pot didn't work. It was like mold and just everything was awful, wasn't it? But we didn't have time to find somewhere else.
No, and then we had to drive anyway. Yes,
Yeah.
but
But we digress. But we always do.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah.
Queuing back to the mark.
Things like that. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
that Kate has I think Kate accomplished a goal that she never knew she would have at the end of the story, which
That's true.
was very dear to my heart. And I thought that really was special to her. And so in a way she did learn from, she did grow, she did have some trust. She did I think in her eyes, the right thing. And took a lot of risks, but I think that kind of brings her into herself more, given that she had all these incredible tasks to do.
Yeah.
So and who are we really, and how much do our biological parents, I mean, well, sure, it's important, but it shouldn't have to mark you for life. Is what I'm trying to say.
And you don't know who you are until you're in a situation like that. Everybody reacts differently in moments of crisis, and some people thrive and some people fail. So it's you don't normally meet that kind of a test in life, but during the war, people met it all the time.
They did. They didn't know if they would be around the next day. I mean, that's just how it was. Whether there was bombing or whatever happened. So and Kate, I don't know what's in store for Kate, but there's a lot of war to go, and there's a lot of better. I don't know if I will, but
Are you thinking of writing another Kate, or it's sort of up in the air at the moment?
it's a mystery, Barbara.
Okay. Stay tuned. So, question?
I actually have one.
Okay.
So, Cara, what's the difference for you between writing an espionage thriller, which is Night Flight to Paris and 3 Hours in Paris, versus the Amy LeDuc PI series? And have you found that it's kind of refreshing to go to something else?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you. And for years, when Rhys and I would talk, I did Amy LeDuc, and I had all this information about World War II, that I had from my notebooks when I'm in Paris, and writing things down, and it really wasn't until I saw that footnote about Hitler coming to Paris for 3 hours and leaving and never returning that I thought there's something there. I'm going to be. And I was talking to Juliet, my editor, and she goes, "You're really obsessed about that, and there's all these parts about World War II that do not fit in an Amy LeDuc book, but they're great things." And so she said, "You could use a lot of that," and I thought, yeah. And it took me a long time, and I think you were asking this before, sorry, I forgot, about coming up with the voice. So at first, Kate was going to be from Montana. And I was really trying, a country gal, a backwoods gal, and then it just wasn't coming. And then I was on book tour in Oregon, and stayed with my friend who works in the history department there in where's that place where they have the Shakespeare?
Ashland.
And she was saying, you're writing about someone from Montana. She said, "Have you ever been to Montana?" And I go, "No." And she goes, "Well, you've come here all the time." And she's part of this history project at the time that we're recording women who had been descendants of frontierswomen, people who came in the, in the wagons and came over the mountains, and a lot of the family were still in some of what had been homesteads, and there is this record of these women in Oregon, and you should, listen to some of those oral histories. And she could, I said, perfect, and I did, and I thought, that's who Kate is. She grew up there, she came from this stock, she's resilient, she had 5 brothers, and that really helped me come up with her voice. And it was liberating because, and you were always telling me to write a standalone, and I was scared. I was scared to, because it was leaving my comfort zone. It was exercising a new muscle, and it was like, yeah, she could be American, and she could be, she could be a big bone gal. She would make all these mistakes, like I do when I'm in Paris, and that was liberating in a way. So that was kind of freeing for me.
And the interesting, in the first book, America has not entered the war, so she's free to walk around Paris and really as an outsider, isn't she?
Exactly. Until 41, we weren't in the war. But,
Actually, it was 40. Did you all realize that we never declared war on Germany? They declared war on us. We declared war on Japan, but America didn't really have an appetite for joining the German conflict in Europe. And Hitler preempted us by declaring war on the United States. Most people think that it was logical that we would have done both, but we didn't.
Churchill was happy.
Yeah.
Well, he'd been working on it for a long time. Roosevelt, absolutely. But I think most people just assumed that when we declared war on Japan, we left into the entire war on both fronts, but we didn't. So, one of Hitler's, he made a couple of really poor calls. That was one. Russia was the other. Apparently he never knew anything about Napoleon. Right. But it's interesting how people like that just can't stop. I've often thought Napoleon could have been happy with Europe, right? But he just couldn't stop. And I asked this question the other night of a really renowned writer of Russian spy fiction and everything, Bowen, and I said to him, what was that? And he said, well, people like that are never, just never content. But he also thought that he thought it would be a slam dunk. And most were, just like we see, Putin thought it would be a slam dunk to get the Ukraine. The Japanese thought it would be a slam dunk to take out Pearl Harbor. Wars arise when one side underestimates the other. And it goes from what looks like a slam dunk into an actual conflict.
Well, and also these grandiose visions that they have that are completely unpractical. I mean, Putin now sees himself as Peter the Great, with a huge empire. And, it's quite unrealistic, but nobody dares to tell him otherwise.
I think he's more like Joe Stalin. But to get to what you were saying, I liked that she did 3 hours in Paris. She had 36 hours. I mean, there was a deadline, so every hour was important. And I love to read those kind of books. I mean, not all the time, but I will pick me up a good thriller, and I want to just go. So that, and especially when you have Hitler and the Gestapo after you, that really tends to speed things up. Whereas Amy has to sit down and look at it and confer with Renee, and they have to figure out.
She has a baby too.
She has
really
a baby.
makes a big difference when she had a baby. Right. Anyone else have a question that they would like to ask?
Have you ever tried to consult people that produce programming, especially for Netflix in France, in Paris, for some of your things? I would think they'd be interested in it.
Well, I'm not supposed to do that because I'm just the writer, but but I did. Actually, there's a bookstore, the Red Wheelbarrow bookstore, and she said, there was an agent in here, a scout agent, a scouter, scouting, and she said, oh, those books, those are probably already optioned, and so Penelope was emailing me, are they optioned, whatever. Anyway, she said contact her, and then they were options, so it wasn't. But of course, I brought her a copy of this to her. Clever you.
Why aren't you supposed to?
Well, we have foreign agents.
They
shouldn't preempt the work of their agent.
No. Your agent normally ties in with a movie agent too, who does the marketing of the book.
So when you sell your option,
I don't sell my option.
if you sell, like Louise Penny, I'm thinking, when you sell the option to your book, do you have no more rights to the content?
They can
Well,
do,
depends on
they
what.
can do with it whatever they want. Is the
Yeah.
rule.
My daughter's a filmmaker and she buys options. And I said, can you change that? And she said, absolutely.
What-
I was horrified.
Elmore Letters said it very well. He said, you know, before you sell it, it's your car and you can drive it, and once you sell it, it's their car. But the important thing to remember, and this comes up a lot talking to like C.J. Box the other night and so forth, your books are not affected by whatever the film company does. It's still your book on the shelf, and whatever they choose to make of it doesn't affect your book. And
But the reader does
well,
like it.
What about Sarah Paretsky? Her series was ruined by the TV series.
It wasn't.
Thank you. I was.
They still, the I still stayed the
owns her
same.
rights
Robert
and she
Parker
can't get
had
it
the most
out.
bizarre
Thank you.
Spencer movie. You
How
know,
about Margaret Atwood? She was a consultant on her things for Hampton's jail.
you can do that, but you know, in the same way that the publisher has a right to title your book anything they want. They can put any cover art on it they want. None of that belongs. The publisher has a copyright to everything but the actual words in the book. They own the cover design, they own the typography, they the title, and sometimes in, if you remember the whole thing with Nancy Drew and all, they can have a franchise where they hire people. A lot of the cozies that when was that, in the early aughts and in the 90s and all, there were a whole series of cozy books, and they just hired in people to write them, and they owned the name and they owned the concept.
Angela Lansbury.
Right, they
Yes,
were,
yeah.
she was right, yeah.
But they're all like, the candle making mysteries and
I
soap making
I
mysteries.
once accidentally outed, I mean, I totally didn't mean to, but I was doing an event with a guy that was writing the Jessica Fletchers.
Oh, yeah.
Not the
Donald
her-
Bain?
Done, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And we were doing it at a library in Cave Creek. And to my amazement, when I got there, all these women were in TWA uniforms, stewardess uniforms, and I thought, why? It turned out that he actually wrote Coffee, Tea, or Me as a female author. He was and then he wrote 5 sequels. And he said the best part was he dedicated every one of them to himself. And nobody ever noticed that it was a female pseudonym. So then he went on to write the Angela Lansbury. People were going, well, we didn't know. And I said, out of the blue, I said, here's the thing. Margaret Truman actually never wrote any of her mysteries, and color drained out of his face. And I went, oh my God. I said, you are Margaret Truman. He said, yes.
I didn't know.
So there are people who have entire careers
Gee.
writing, books. No, Margaret Truman was done. Coffee, Tea, or Me, and that whole franchise was him. And then the Jessica Fletchers until he died.
I remember him. I remember him in
Yeah.
Voucher County.
What was this person's name that you're talking about?
Sorry?
What is the person's name that you're
I
talking
can't remember his last name.
Donald Bain.
Thank you, Donald Baines. Right.
B-A-I-N.
B-A-I-N. Yeah. Really lovely man who had an entirely successful authorial career, never having once written a book. That's Donald Baines.
But how sad that nobody would ever know who you are.
But he was actually quite, he really enjoyed the Coffee, Tea, or Me. As I said, 7 books all dedicated to Donald Bain. Right. So anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am.
How is it that you have your books all in Paris and French, and where does that come from in your life?
Why am I obsessed with France? Maybe. Yeah, I'm a Francophile. Yes. So I went to and some people know this story very well, so I'll make it quick, but I went to a French Catholic school with nuns, and they taught us French. But it was
In the United States?
Yes, in California. Yeah, my dad was a Francophile. He's from Chicago. We have no French blood, nothing. I mean, who knows why, but he made my mother watch Julia Child and cook like the French people. I don't know why, but he was like that. So he sent me to this school, and I learned archaic French. And then I went to, when I first went to France, I tried to speak, and use it. And I remember, and Rhys has heard this story many times, I started to use my French and say, asking directions. I was really trying. And he turned to me and said in perfectly clipped British English, my dear, you are using words we haven't used since the 1900s. years later, I went back to Paris to stay with her. I forgot that. I told my father, who was a huge reader, and he was. Then I went again, much later. I had a small child, my son, and we stayed in the Marais for one night. And that whole story came back to me because I had a child now, and it was like a whole different way of looking at the world. Like, what would I have done? What if I'd been a young mother in 1942? How would I have fed him? What would I have done? And I came back and I told my father, and he goes, "You're just obsessed with that. You need to write that down." And so I got into a writing class at UC Berkeley Extension, and started writing. And here I am, 20-something years. So it started with that, but it was trying to figure. I think a lot of us write mysteries because we're trying to figure out, things, you know, to make sense of the world. You know, that's why we're all in the New York Times bestseller list, because people try to make sense of our world, especially now. It's a long answer.
And of course, Cara keeps writing so she can go back to Paris every week.
Selfish reason. Well, I want to thank you, all of you, for staying for a long time this afternoon, and I want to thank Cara for flying in.
Thank Rhys for the title, and I'm staying chez Rhys.
Sarah, put on your seat now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Barbara.
Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at PoisonPENFoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.